having a major impact on air travel, and it's likely to get even worse. Thousands of flights are being delayed daily at airports around the country, in part because of a shortage of air traffic controllers who are now working without a paycheck. According to the online aviation tracker FlightAware, there were more than 20,000 delays nationwide yesterday. Reagan National Airport had nearly 250 delays, as well as dozens of delays at Dulles and BWI. Of course, weather can be also a factor. But if you are planning to fly during the shutdown, what should you know ahead of time? Well, that's the question we're going to lead off with our expert today, Katie Nastro. Great to have you. She's from the website going.com. So off the bat, what do travelers need to know?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I think what travelers need to know is that the longer this persists, the higher the likelihood that you could encounter a delay. Now, cancellations, the bright spot out of this entire period has been that cancellations have been at average or just below average. So that's, easier to deal with when you're traveling. However, when it comes to delays, what we want people to be aware of course, is that the likelihood is higher at this point, but also there are a couple things they can do to safeguard themselves. Try to take that early morning flight. We often see a 25 to 30 percentage point higher on-time arrival rate when you target those early morning flights versus those later flights in the afternoon or evening. So switching to an earlier flight can give you a little bit of peace of mind and assurance, as well as checking the National Airspace System FAA website. At the very bottom, you can see whether or not there's any air traffic control staffing triggers for the day. There are various notices there, and that's just an extra layer of sort of giving yourself as much information as possible before you head to the airport, and as well as always having your airline app downloaded so you can get notifications as fast as possible to your delay.
All right, so let's say our flight is going to take off. Let's talk about getting to the airport and those TSA lines. Should we expect those to be longer?
Another bright spot is that even though we are now basically a month into this shutdown, we haven't seen TSA lines as exponentially higher in terms of processing. There have been some sporadic cases of longer wait times, but it hasn't been to the extent that we would see any red flags. So we want people to be aware that it hasn't been as bad as it could be. But again, the name of the game here is the longer this lasts, the bigger the impacts that it can have on travelers, because these essential workers are really in a financial pressure cooker. And the longer this lasts, the higher the likelihood that they seek additional work to sort of compensate themselves during this really rough time period that they're not getting paid and really have no end in sight.
Let's get into passenger rights. That's a big area. Can you get a refund if your flight is, say, canceled and maybe it was the only direct flight for the day?
Great point to bring up. And this is another thing that people need to just be reminded about. If you're traveling during this time period and your flight is significantly delayed by 3+ hours or more for a domestic flight, 6+ hours for international, you do have that right to a refund or a rebooking. And in that case, if it's the only flight of the day, you definitely have that right to a refund, as well as it doesn't matter if it's caused because of weather or because of the shutdown. It is still in effect, and it is a regulation that we need to be aware of and exercise during this time.
What if it was a non-refundable ticket? Do you still have that coverage?
Doesn't matter the ticket type, which is something that people need to keep in mind regardless of whatever category of booking that they chose, whether that's a business class ticket or basic economy ticket. Does not matter. If your flight is canceled or significantly delayed, you are protected.
All right. Katie Nastro, a travel expert with the website going.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.